live. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of our new segment called Women of Steel, live on the Matt Brown Show. With me today is none other than Tanya Kunze. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Yay. So happy to be back.
Part 2.
Yay. Awesomeness.
Part 2. So today we're going to talk, as if you guys haven't heard by now, Women of Steel is really about shining a light on amazing women, kind of shaping the current and future state of business and entrepreneurship, of which you're 100% qualified.
Thank you.
So before we dive into like who you are and all that kind of stuff, where were you earlier today?
So today I was speaking at a CIB Women's Day event, and then after this I'm speaking at another event at Discovery.
Okay, cool. And what are you speaking about exactly?
This morning it was very much about owning your power, owning your personal power, finding your unique, and really all the neuroscience, once again, of introspection with women.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Right. So, and then also you've been recently covered in this here magazine called Life, Luxury and Style, The Conversation, and then 40 all-round amazing women. Quote unquote, legitimately. Welcome, sales team. Where is that page?
One somewhere.
You find that for me. I
want
to talk about some of the stuff
very,
you said in
very,
there.
very honored and flattered to be here. And I looked at the caliber of the women that are next to me. Wow.
Who is in there? Can you give us some name drops?
You've got, actually, Costa Semenya is in here,
really?
which I thought was really quite amazing because she's a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And we've got... Sure, I mean, all the names in here, we can go through them actually. There's some Jenna Cliffords in here.
Are they all local ladies?
It looks like all of them are local ladies. They all look South African, and it's beautiful because it's a Rainbow Nation magazine.
Really, him?
It's all the powerful women
of
all walks of life, from creative to medical.
Yeah.
And the women that have been inspiring and shaping South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I'm stoked to be part of it.
I know, it's crazy.
I know.
So what, can you walk us through, I mean, the title of this one here is called The Beauty of Metamorphosis. And it's funny because I was chatting to Carmen Murray, who was on our first sort of episode of this particular segment. And we spoke about this sort of personal transformation and how... transformation inherently is a very personal process. And I see here you've got the beauty of metamorphosis. So what were you trying to get across there?
So transformation is exactly what it's about. And I've had this little thing at the moment. I get these thoughts and then I play with them a little bit and I've come up with something. So I was driving and I saw a sign that was talking about previously disadvantaged. And I sat with that statement. And I thought, what does my body do when I hear that? Because as a woman, because we haven't necessarily been in the workspace for hundreds of years, it's literally decades that we've been allowed to be in the space that we're in, we technically are, as women, previously disadvantaged, right? So when I say that statement, it makes me want to take a step back.
Okay.
It makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. But what does previously disadvantaged actually mean? It actually means advantaged. So when I say I'm advantaged, it makes me want to take a step forward. So I think I'm going to own as a woman, I'm advantaged. And I'm going to stay with that.
Preach, brother. Preach that. Round of applause. There you go. So if for those of you who have been living in a tree and don't know who Tanya Kunze is, why don't you give us the headline here? Who are you and what are you all about in like one sentence sort of thing?
So one sentence, I would say to you that I'm a unique thinker and I like to turn the world on its head and try and see it differently. But essentially, I'm a neuroscience coach and I'm someone who likes to develop people or help them develop themselves to their greatest self. And I like to go into companies and make those companies work effectively and efficiently, leaning into sales and leadership.
Which is a big deal, right? Especially in the context of women empowerment. But let's dive into that subject. What are your views on the current state of women empowerment today?
You know, it's an interesting one because from a personal standpoint, I'm very much about skill set. I'm very much about capability and I'm very much about personal drive. And so when I work with organizations, and it might be an inherently confident related aspect of self, I walk in there, but I've never felt like a woman in a business environment. I felt like a person in a business environment.
Really? So you never felt prejudiced in any way?
You know, I honestly have felt
Or disadvantaged?
I felt quite confident, and standing out in any corporate space, going out there, having an opinion, I felt that I've been worked well with, and I think it might have to do with a level of self-confidence. But I have seen a lot of women really rather being quiet. What I've heard speaking to women is that maybe from a cultural perspective, it's not respectful necessarily to speak up. I've heard people saying that, women do feel like they still have a long way to go. So there's definitely a lot of variety of schools of thought out there. But I think if you really know your stuff, you're good at it, you're confident, you're powerful in your own self, and you don't sweat the small stuff. You know, I'm sure over the years I've had comments of many natures.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I just build a bridge, because so what?
Yeah.
You know, I might be thinking it. They're just saying it.
But it's interesting that you have such a different view to the general narrative, because the narrative is very simple. You know, women have been prejudiced from a patriarchy legacy perspective for fucking centuries, pretty much for the rest throughout time. Carmen is even describing this morning how literally specific elements of history have been completely deleted because women were responsible for them.
Interesting.
The movie Hidden Figures.
Yes.
You know, where they were instrumental in putting man on the moon, essentially, but were never accredited for that. You know, there's this massive legacy of patriarchy that needs to be addressed, to your point. At some point, you know, I don't know when we get there and how you measure. Have we now arrived at equality, and how will we know?
I'm not sure if we have.
No, we haven't. I don't think we have.
And I'm not sure if we have on any level of anything really, because I've made it my statement, which we'll read through just now. Is I think equality is an interesting topic. I don't think it's something we should ever strive for. Is there a one-size-fits-all T-shirt?
Interesting thought.
So for me, I'm going, why don't you just own your own space and not try and be like everybody else? So I don't try and be like everybody else. I don't try to be samies with the person. Someone's going to have a better opinion than me, and someone's going to have a worse opinion. Someone's going to know what to do, and someone won't. I don't know if that's going to be me or not.
Is that the same as saying, well, if you want equality, take it?
I just think you should not have to worry about measuring up to the next person. We're male, female, ethnicity, religion. I think just be your unique, amazing self and own that space, and whatever that works out in your environment, it is.
So for me, I like to subscribe to the idea that comparison is the thief of joy.
I like that.
So if you compare yourself as a female to a male, it's automatic. By virtue of comparison, you're stealing from yourself, which is kind of the next step to what you were saying, right? Which was, dude, don't you want to close that window for me? Is that, if you feel that you are entitled, then you are.
Yeah.
It's like you act as if. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think just owning your space is definitely where people need to start playing a lot more. We try so hard to all be the same. I've never understood that. Why, fashion and speech and all those things, everyone wants to look and be the same. So, 1 minute it's big hair, the next minute it's no hair. And it's just a matter of people wanting to sort of follow these trends and processes. It's just interesting. And we all do it. We all fall prey to it. Imagine we uninstalled the judgment program in our physiology. What would happen?
I don't know. What do you guys think? Live studio audience, rent a crowd? Anyone? Any thoughts? It's a deep one.
So if we uninstall
I'm coming
judgment,
back to you. I expect at least 3 answers.
If we uninstall judgment, we uninstall opinion. And all of a sudden, the fashion industry collapses because no one would care what you're wearing because you're not judging. And soap operas wouldn't exist. And I think most commodities would actually disassemble, because why would you want to be better than the next person? What would you have to prove? So judgment and opinion lead to a tremendous amount of the Me Too syndrome. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not saying it is either. But if we just stopped judging and we just started being, maybe life would be a lot easier.
It's kind of hard not to judge, though, when you're comparing yourself to everybody else.
Exactly. But is that the human condition?
Well, the thing is, you're not just judging other people. You're judging them through you.
Exactly. It's through your perceptions.
Yeah, totally. And your perceptions of your self-worth
Yep.
and entitlement or whatever that is. Right.
So there comes the man-woman thing, you know. And if you walk in there and you just say, listen, I'm good at what I do.
You're good at what you do.
You're good at what
basically.
you
do. Okay. It's funny how you spend, when you're a youngster, you spend most of your life trying to fit in and then the rest of your life trying to stand out.
Absolutely. I think I'm one of those that have never really been, I've never really been the person that tries to be part of something. I just am what I am. And I think I've learned at a very young age that you will be judged whether you do something or you don't. Someone's always going to have an opinion. And if you become okay with that, it doesn't matter what the opinion is. As long as you're comfortable with yourself and your self-worth and your belief systems and what you do, and you own your mistakes, and you own the things that you do wrong, and you learn through them, I think that's a much more powerful life to have.
So I want to talk to you about reputation, if you don't mind, for a second, because I think women's reputation is a very important subject to talk about in the context of women empowerment, right? It's like you're always trading on your reputation. Like you've got an incredible reputation in the neuroscience and sales space and as a personal brand, etc. But for many other women, it's not what they have. They don't have that kind of personal currency. Do you know what I mean? And oftentimes they lack the belief that they can express themselves to the degree that, like you do, as you described. Like you walk into a boardroom and this is just who I am and I'm qualified to be here and I don't give a fuck what you think, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But am I right?
It does sound a bit like me, yes.
It does sound a bit like you. Yeah, we're crazy similar in that sense. But it's this whole thing around caring what other people think.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, why do you care what other people think of you as a woman or not?
I think it's largely media related. You know, if you look at most magazines that have been airbrushed and you see what women wish they looked like, because none of them look like that on the cover in reality. And they're the minority that look like that in the first place, and then they get airbrushed. And we have this perception of having to have this external beauty that measures us against others. And I find it quite fascinating how there's that the weighing up constantly of having to be the most this or the most that. And I think when you just let that go and you just try to be the best that you can be, I'm not saying let yourself go, I'm saying look after yourself, but you're never going to be the perfect person. And I think just understanding that is a powerful place to play. And from a reputational perspective, what seems to be an overnight success or what seems to be a confident human took 10, 15, 20, 30 years to create. So my confidence in that boardroom didn't happen overnight. My confidence was being knocked down, get back up, learn, study, work, grow, develop, self-help, self-development, self-forgiveness workshops, studying, and really working hard on self to get there. You don't just get there.
But it's but it's kind of like a futile effort in some sense, in that, you know, you're trying to live up to the expectations of a patriarchy. Do you know what I mean? That's been pre-existed for so many years. But it's like you shouldn't care. One point I'm trying to get to is like you shouldn't really care as a woman to try and meet those
100%.
expectations. You should only try and meet your own.
100%.
Because what happens is when you try and meet other people's expectations, inevitably you're not going to meet those expectations according to your own standards, and therefore you judge yourself, and therefore you're going to have self-worth issues and confidence issues and all these things, and so it becomes a vicious cycle. It's like you shouldn't care what other people think because your reputation should only exist with you. It shouldn't exist with anybody else in this room and anybody listening to us or whatever. And, you know, and I'm saying this because it's my truth and I've learned that through running this podcast. Do you know
You're
what I mean?
raising such a beautiful topic, and it's something I've been working on a lot, and I've been doing workshops on a lot, and it's the word introspection. And because we live in a physical world, we are very physical. So we start looking at the external and we kind of stay stuck there. And if you look at the education system, we taught external all the time. And it's always, what can we do for others? What does the customer want? What do people want? It's always an external dynamic. But when you start internalizing, when you start introspecting, and you start building inside what you can't see, the soft skills, the EQ, the emotional, the understanding of self, the understanding of your operational systems, and all of those dynamics, you build such a solid core of self that you don't need to compete with another person because there's no point because you're solid.
It's interesting, right? Yeah. So if we remove judgment, anybody got a comment there? No? Chris, I know you must have one. Hang on, come grab the mic here, bro. Chris is a huge fan, by the way, of your work.
Yay.
Hi, how's it going?
Fine, and you?
Good to have you back again.
Thank you.
So just after your points on the removing judgment thing, I just found it very interesting because it's like a double-edged sword almost. Because often you hear judgment and the first thing you think about is, oh no, that's a negative thing. No one should be judgmental. But then it's actually something that we use in our everyday lives. Like you said, you use it like there would be no fashion industry because that's essentially, it gives way for opinion. And then when you don't have opinion, you almost lose a whole aspect of what humanity is. So I totally agree that people should be less judgmental, but if we had to remove the whole judgment aspect, everything would fall to pieces.
So can I put something to you? If you imagined an hourglass, and in that hourglass was the amount of psychological energy you could put out into the world in a 24-hour day. And you could uninstall all the amounts of judgment moments that you have. How much more could we achieve as a society?
Yeah, I think it's endless, really.
Okay. And so what I'm saying is it's wasted energy. It's completely pointless and futile energy because we could be turning that into advancements rather than debilitation.
Okay. No, I agree.
Anyone else? No? Okay, good. Let's do quote of the day. Thanks, Chris. Take us through this one.
Right. We are above and beneath no one, but own your unique. And I lean heavily into what we've just discussed, saying, be your best self and don't judge other people. Just you're above and beneath no one. Why would you try and be?
It's interesting that. What do you say to someone who feels that they're not worthy?
I'd say start introspecting and working on yourself. There's so much that you can do to help self, fix self, grow self, develop self. I've mentioned it many times. I did a self-forgiveness workshop, which I really didn't think I needed to do. I was like, oh, my hat, do I have to do this?
Sorry, in what context was this?
I needed to do one of my courses. And in order to get into the course, we had to do this self-forgiveness workshop. And it was like stabbing myself in the eye. I was like, oh, my God, really? Cried for 3 days solidly.
What? Really?
It was epic. It was groundbreaking. And one of the things they made us do was write our own obituary. And in that moment, you realize what you actually leave behind is not monetary. It's not physical. So I phoned my dad and I said, Dad, what are you leaving me behind? What are your 5 top nuggets about life? Because that's what I want to own, where I don't have to hit my head and you've done it for me. So amazing information and aspects of self came through that. So those are aspects that we need to look at and work on.
So you mentioned the word legacy a second ago. What kind of legacy do you think the Me Too movement is going to leave behind or has left behind?
I think it's a transitioning one. You know, like with anything, that pendulum always swings full circle. So it's going to start on the one side and it's going to swing up, which it has, and then it's going to go all full circle, and it'll probably hurt a lot of people in that capacity, because everything goes to an extreme, and anything extreme is not necessarily healthy. But when it swings back to the middle and it finds a compromise between the two, I think it'll be a very powerful generation.
I agree. I've got a 1.5-year-old daughter, so this whole conversation is really, or this whole series, I should say, is very interesting for me, because I'm always reflecting and projecting forward and going, well, you know, when she's 18 and she's got a phone and she's got access to information, then what, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is that all going to look like? But before we go there, Kira, do you have a question for you? Go ahead.
Hi, Kira. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Okay, thanks.
My question is, do you want me to sit? Oh, fabulous. How do you get to a place of self-forgiveness? Because I mean, I understand that it's a process, and it would be. Do you think it's something that you could fully overcome, or do you eventually just get to a point where you catch yourself and then know how to reset that thinking?
So I do believe you can overcome it. And the thing is that every emotion we have translates into a vibrational energy that can be measured in megahertz. And guilt is one of the lowest vibrational reactions we can have in life, which brings us into a whole neuroscience and physiological reaction in the body where you literally get something called inattentional blindness, and it prevents you from living a life that's optimal. So overcoming it is not a maybe, it's a critical.
Okay.
And one actually has to go deeply into those feelings that you went through and really live them and feel them and work through them and let them go. But my advice would be fervently not to do it alone. And I would suggest that one would go to somebody that's highly qualified to work through aspects, because usually those forgiveness aspects are working from the past and do need a bit of hand-holding along the journey. So I wouldn't necessarily use coaching for something like that. I would rather use psychology or psychiatry for something like that, depending how deep it is.
Sure.
If it's something that you've just started dealing with and you've realized it and it's not really such a life-altering one, but it's something you can just smack on the head, by all intents and purposes, go coaching. But if it's a deep-seated, long-winded, guilt-ridden aspect of self that you're living with, you need to live through it and come out the other side.
Aye, so it's almost like unpacking a mild form of trauma.
One has to unpack that trauma, yeah, because what you do is you squash it down. So just because we can't see energy, it doesn't mean you haven't squashed it down, and it lives there until you get rid of it, and it festers.
Okay. Jeez.
So it has to be dealt with.
We spoke about this morning, funny enough, with Carmen.
Yes.
So she shared stuff she had never shared to anyone, weirdly, this morning. And it was all about, like, she doesn't have any memories from when she was 0 to the age of 6. And
Most
then,
formative years.
yeah, I don't either, which is weird. Like, legitimately, I don't remember. Like, I can't imagine. I was 4 years old, like my son, playing with RC cars. It's the kind of thing you would remember. I don't actually have any memory. That's the only similarity from that point. But anyway, I'm digressing. What she was describing was why. Why doesn't she have any memory of that time? And so her mom got sick and she had 4 strokes. And so she was, all cut up about it. And this last year, she's done a lot of kind of soul searching. And for because of the trauma, it started to unlock memories. And so she was. Well, I don't know how you put this in a PC fashion, but essentially she was abused.
Okay.
Yeah, and she had no idea. Do you understand?
Sure,
and so
she blocked it.
because she blocked it, and it's like this. I call it like psychodrama. But the thing is, like you have to go there. Like, I don't care what your background is, whether you male or female. At some point, like there's it's like, they're gifts of recovery. Does it make sense? And so one of those gifts can be self-forgiveness. One of those gifts can be, a new paradigm or bandwidth to create new decisions around, who you date, maybe leaving relationships that are abusive or whatever, or walking into a boardroom full of confidence, whereas before you were broken. Do you know what I'm saying? But it's story, and I think everyone's pretty much got like 4 questions on their mind. It's like, who am I? What's my story? What are my gifts? What action should I take? Who should I take that action with? You know what I mean?
And every single thing will be shaped based on your experience and your past. So, I talk about the coffee shop. Remember that? I don't know if I want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Ahead, yeah.
So I talk about the subconscious mind being the shopping mall. And if you had to try and remember every single nuance of that shopping mall, it's physically and humanly impossible, because there's just too much. Every shape, color, sound, sight, emotion you've ever experienced since birth is in the shopping mall, right? So that's your subconscious. And then I call the conscious mind your coffee shop. It lives just outside the shopping mall, and it's got your what you're currently focusing on and what you framed your life with. And it's where you make all your decisions from. But a lot of people are unconscious in that shopping mall, in that coffee shop. They're unconscious there. They haven't really had a deep hard look. They haven't questioned it. And what you're talking about now at that level of introspection is questioning why you're making those decisions. Based on what? Why do you feel insecure? Why do you feel secure? What is framing your foundation? And if people have gone through a trauma, what typically happens is the brain will literally get stuck there until it gets dealt with. And a person can be an emotional age of 6, but a physical age of 40. And they need to then actually do that catch-up game where they literally get all that burden off and then work through that. But that is a whole psychological journey that can take a long time, and however long it needs to take for that individual.
Yeah, and it should take, but again, it's not a destination, right?
No,
you never quite figure it out.
I don't think so.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you get somewhere, but you don't really get to know what you were all about, because you haven't experienced everything there is in life to experience.
100%. So you're only going to understand life based on your framework of it. But something else interesting came through for me the other day. And I'm watching my little boy, Thomas. He's an avid gamer. And he's actually very good. And I was watching him playing, and he was controlling the avatar. And what came up for me, and I related back to life, is every single possible move we could make on that game has been pre-programmed by the app developer or the game developer. So whether he turns left with his avatar or he turns right with his avatar, the journey has been pre-mapped and is possible. So couldn't we relay that to life? And based on the decision you make, if you're in control of the controller, and society isn't in control of it, could you imagine what you could do with your life?
That's deep. It's your first bell of the day. Well done. But it is kind of weird, right? In the sense that it's a system that's self-contained, as is business, as is women empowerment, as is, they're all self-contained systems. They're related, but in essence, it's to your point. It's like I was talking again about this morning around like, do you have that controller in your hands, or is someone else? Are you the kind of, what do you call it? The
Avatar.
character in the game, the avatar in the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Where someone else is kind of manipulating you.
And I would have to say to you that my guess, and it's a complete guess, would be that probably 95% of the world is being controlled, and they're unconsciously just going through life, going through the motions, being told what to wear, what to read, what to do, what to think, how to be. And it's that small percentage that's questioning everything, that's pushing back the little rebels we spoke about, and turning life on its head and saying, hold on a minute. I'm taking control of my life.
I can prove that what you've said is just right. We're doing the show.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? It's like there's this new... It's funny because it's been coming up over and over and over just this last few weeks in general, that there's this new consciousness that's coming to the fore, from like equal rights to racism to political systems, socialism versus capitalism, whatever, and women empowerment, etc. Me Too. And brands got stung for doing things that weren't completely PC. Colin Kaepernick, when he got down on one knee, there's this consciousness that's suddenly very present, and everybody suddenly, thanks to a Twitter account and a social or a phone, basically can now weigh in. And we even talking about things like when Trump basically got up and did a speech around this El Paso mass shooting story. And he spoke about computer games and how they're like a conduit to this like mass shooting stuff, which is a load of fucking bullshit, right? Because in Japan and China, they play way more games, but they don't have mass shootings. So it's not one thing. My point basically being is that the world is suddenly becoming aware. It's becoming self-aware. And we're trying to figure out what is these new kind of rights that need to be assigned to age-old issues that both age-old and actually new issues. So I don't know whether you've seen this program called The Great Hack.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
So I was on the radio earlier today, and this guy obviously did loads of research, but I basically put this tweet out and I said, data rights should become our new human rights. And it was all about this Cambridge Analytica story and how they manipulated the Brexit story and the Trump election. And by the way, numerous country elections, thank God they got... we became aware of what the fuck was going on there, because that would have just literally ruined choice and democracy, the fundamentals of democracy, where through data, basically the idea is that, Facebook, everything you like, tweet, comment, share, blah, 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 etc., all your connections, everything, the amount of time you spend browsing on, everything is being measured. So it's about what you click and what you do, but also about how, it's like all the things you don't think about. That 1 second that you hung over that thing around that one article about the environment. You didn't share it, but you waited there for a second. That gets tracked.
Yep.
Anyway, point being is that they can build profiles of people and they can start to manipulate communities. And I actually think it's like this, these mass shootings thing. My personal view is that information is now the new world war. As if you can manipulate information, you can manipulate ideologies, systems,
100%.
views, actions, and you can drive someone to do a mass shooting
100%.
if you can get their attention.
So the interesting thing for me is everything you've spoken about now is all about control. And it's about controlling, let's call it the masses of society. So let's call it the species of humans as a whole. Could you imagine how powerful the human species could be if it was just not segmented? So we get segmented into male, female, ethnicity, religion, and a whole bunch of other things. Imagine if we just dissolved the segmentation and we just became
People.
a species.
Yeah.
The power, we would be uncontrollable. So that could never happen.
Why though?
Because it just wouldn't work in the way the current infrastructure is. I'm not saying I would disagree. I'd love it to be like that.
Where does this indifference come from then? So going back to, women, men in the business and entrepreneurship space, where does this indifference come from?
I think it's just been created to segment, to have people feel different, to have people feel isolated, and to take that power away. A lot of the things that happen out there, bringing you down emotionally, for example, reading bad newspaper stories, pick up a newspaper, you don't feel happy at the end of that newspaper, even if you've hit the sports section.
Especially now.
Exactly. So it's designed to keep you down. 95% of the world is assumed to be vibrating at what we call fear, which is a very low vibration, which prevents you from being the best you that you can be, because it's a limiting amygdala-based space in the brain. Food, sugar, for example, lowers your vibrational energy. It coats your synapses, so it gives you a false sense of energy. But physically and energetically, it actually lowers your vibration. So the more we are held down from a vibrational perspective, the less we can actually be a unified force. And of course, money rules the world, yeah? So,
but it is about control.
It's about control.
It's divide. I'm different to you, and
divide
you're
and
different
conquer.
to,
You've just
that's it.
put it out there. Art of war.
Yeah.
Lao Tzu. There we
Yeah.
go. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's divide, whoever they might be. It's divide and conquer. So keep us separate, sure. And then we're always under control, which I totally disagree with. So I refuse to be part of that.
So going back to this article here that you somehow were amazingly featured
I'm
on.
so excited.
How did that come about? Yeah.
A lady called Shauna, who's absolutely incredible, called me up and said to me that she would like to chat with me because of the coaching space. And I sat with her. We had the most amazing interaction, and she nominated me as one of the 40. And I don't know how the whole acquisition process happened, how they found all 40 women, but I got the call and I was extremely, extremely flattered. And
Well,
complimented.
congratulations. I think you're deserving of a place there. I just want to talk around this thing around fear, because, information, fear, misinformation, there's a lot of power in disinformation. It's insane. I'm learning that.
Huge.
But, it is all about this whole idea of fear, and we are separate, and women aren't good enough, and whatever, white supremacy and all this kind of malarkey. But it's very prevalent in our world today. And how did, in your view, looking back at the last 30 years and having seen the business environment change so much, what do you now see as it relates to the fear, overcoming fear in the kind of woman empowerment dynamic? Because it's kind of like, you need to overcome that in order to take a seat at the table.
Well, fear, like anything else, is a belief system, right? And you can choose to own it and believe it, or you can choose to dismiss it and work through it. And I think any of those control mechanisms are a decision. And you can decide to feel good about yourself, or you can decide not to. And when you're trying to decide to feel good about yourself, or whatever it is, you need to realize that failure is something that's going to happen, and you need to be okay with that. If people give up after one attempt, no one would ever go to gym. So let alone CrossFit. Okay, we wouldn't have globes today. We wouldn't have medicine today, and so you will fail, and that's okay. And I think this big fear of failure is a disease, because it keeps people down. And also people feeling like they're not good enough because they haven't got a formal education is another fear that could be dismissed, because sometimes the physical experience way outweighs the textbook. A combination of both is primary, and we're fantastic. But if you don't have the gift of the studies, and also studies are available everywhere. You've got edX, that online university. Someone comes to me and they've got a Harvard degree. Someone comes to me, they've got 20 online EDX courses that they did through Harvard but didn't get the qualification. Who am I going to employ?
The EDX dude.
100%.
Or dudette.
Okay, or dudette. Person.
Yeah, person. Yeah,
Human.
exactly. We must learn from our own experiences.
But I love tenacity. You know, get up there. It's not easy getting over your stuff. Do it.
So, women empowerment, why does it matter to you?
It matters to me because I think people matter to me. And whenever I have these kind of conversations about women specifically, and I'm often brought into this environment, I always tend to include people in general because, you know, you get guys that are also very gentle souls, and they're not the sort of, you know, rugby playing, beer drinking, boerewors eating oak. You know, they're gentle. And not that I don't like those, and you know, you get women that are like Lagertha from Vikings, you know, that I'm terrified of. So, you know, I think I like to say that you get people that need to be nurtured and developed and guided and helped, and I think that's what my sole purpose is to take people that just aren't strong enough to lift themselves up and just push them a little bit so that they do it themselves. I don't uplift, I develop. Very big difference. Uplift, you leave them, they fall back down again. Develop, you leave them, they stay strong. And for me, my passion is to take people and just make them more than they were when I met them.
You're a neuroscience coach. How does one coach oneself as a woman?
So I would do courses with other people. I have this philosophy that if you had to imagine your brain as a pinball machine, I always have my little analogies, and you have a thought, and it's a coaching thought, and you push that pinball and it goes ding, 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 and it's all over the place. That thought's never going anywhere but within your parameter, because it can't. So you have to go to a coach or a book or a seminar or whatever it is that you're going to do and have someone knock that pinball out of the way so it actually goes into a different framework of thought, because otherwise you're going to keep coming to the same answer and you get stuck. So as a woman, I would definitely make sure that I seek out other people, mentors, coaches, and self-help books are powerful, and do the hard work.
Have you come across groups for women supports, I suppose in the sense of like on specifically for women entrepreneurship, any initiatives that people should have a look at that you've discovered?
Sure. I'm trying to think. The YPO, Young Professionals Organization, they've got a female unit that they work with, and I was fortunate enough to be invited there. So that's the only one I've come across personally. But typically, it's been quite mixed. Okay.
And then last one for you. What advice do you have for me about raising a girl in today's modern world?
Because I have 2 sons. But if I had a girl, I wouldn't try and... I wouldn't read Walt Disney to her. I'd help her see the realities of life. And I'd be very honest with her about life. And I would... I'd raise a shield maiden.
Exactly. Buy a 12-gauge shotgun and just cut off 1 inch every year she gets older. All right. Thanks, Tanya Kunze, everybody.
Thank you.